What if an empire of 100,000 soldiers marched to crush your homeland, yet one man stood in their way? The year was 1077. To the north, the Song Dynasty stretched like a giant across China. Its armies were vast, its resources endless, and its leaders were determined to make Dai Viet, the kingdom of Vietnam at that time, submit. The spark had been lit 2 years earlier. In 1075, a daring general named Ly Thuong Kiet had struck first. He led his troops across the border, storming the fortified cities of Yongzhou, today Nanning, Guangxi, and Liuzhou, Guangxi. He burned supply depots and left the Song stunned. It was a bold gamble, an audacious move that disrupted the empire's plans. But empires do not forgive humiliation. The Song court responded with fury. They called upon General Guo Kui, a seasoned commander, and ordered the largest invasion force the dynasty had ever sent south. 10,000 cavalry, tens of thousands of infantry, all marching with one purpose: to crush Dai Viet. Imagine the sight: columns of soldiers stretching for miles, armored in iron and leather, banners whipping in the icy wind. War drums pounded like thunder. Along the snow-dusted roads of southern China, the army moved, a river of steel flowing toward the mountains and rivers of Vietnam. For the people of Dai Viet, the threat was overwhelming. Their kingdom was smaller, their population far fewer. By numbers alone, they should have had no chance. And yet Ly Thuong Kiet did not despair. He did not wait passively for destruction. He chose the battlefield. He chose the river. He chose to stand at the Nhu Nguyet River, today known as the Cao River in Bac Ninh, northern Vietnam. Here he would build a line that no empire could cross. Here he would test whether strategy, courage, and unity could defeat raw numbers. The march of the Song army was relentless, echoing across the valleys. Villages along the border trembled as news spread. The invaders were coming. But inside Dai Viet, a different sound began to rise, the rallying cry of resistance. And at its heart stood one man, Ly Thuong Kiet. Ly Thuong Kiet knew that facing the Song army head-on would be suicide. 100,000 men could crush any open battlefield. So he chose something different. He chose the river. The Nhu Nguyet River was narrow, winding, and treacherous. Its currents were strong, its banks uneven. To Ly Thuong Kiet, it was more than water. It was a weapon. Along the banks, he ordered the construction of fortified camps and wooden palisades, stretching for miles. Behind these walls, archers were stationed, their bows ready. In the river itself, he commanded soldiers to drive sharpened stakes into the riverbed, hidden beneath the flowing water, waiting to tear through enemy boats. It was a vision of layered defenses, fortresses on the banks, traps in the water, troops hidden in the forests. Every detail was meant to turn the strength of the Song against themselves. But strategy was not only built on walls and weapons. Ly Thuong Kiet understood something deeper. The war was also a battle of spirit. His soldiers were farmers, villagers, men who had left their homes behind. They faced an enemy larger than anything they had ever imagined. Fear was natural. Doubt was natural. But Ly Thuong Kiet could not allow fear to rule their hearts. So one night, as the moon shone over the river, a voice echoed from the darkness. It was deep, steady, and unyielding, like the voice of heaven itself. The soldiers looked around in awe. The words they heard would never be forgotten. Mountains and rivers of the southern land belong to the southern emperor. As heaven has divided, so it is ordained. How dare the northern invaders trespass? They will surely be destroyed. The poem thundered through the night. Some swore it was the gods speaking. Others said it was Ly Thuong Kiet himself, commanding from the shadows. Whatever the truth, its effect was undeniable. The men's fear melted away. In its place burned a fierce resolve. From that night onward, every arrow they loosed, every stroke of the oar, every step on the muddy banks carried with it a belief. This was their land. This was their destiny. The Nhu Nguyet River was no longer just a line on a map. It had become a wall of spirit, a barrier no empire could easily cross. And as the Song army drew closer, beating their war drums, Ly Thuong Kiet's defenses stood waiting, silent, patient, and ready to strike. The Song army finally reached the Nhu Nguyet River. Before them lay the defenses of Dai Viet, walls, camps, archers, in the dark waters of a river that looked calm, but hid death beneath its surface. At dawn, the drums thundered. Guo Kui ordered the first assault. Waves of infantry charged toward the riverbanks, carrying wooden planks, shields, and ladders. Their shouts shook the morning air. From the opposite shore, the defenders waited. Then, like a storm, arrows blackened the sky. Tens of thousands of shafts rained down on the Song soldiers as they scrambled to the water's edge. Shields cracked. Men fell screaming. The attack faltered, but the Song pressed on. They tried to build floating bridges. They lashed boats together to cross. Some even plunged into the river, swimming with shields above their heads. But the river was not merciful. Hidden stakes tore through the bottoms of boats. Men were dragged under by the current, their armor weighing them down until the water swallowed them whole. Guo Kui's officers shouted for order, but chaos spread. The sound of horns and drums mixed with the cries of the dying. On the Dai Viet side, the defenders roared in defiance, their arrows and stones raining like iron hail. Night fell, but the Song were not done. Under the cover of darkness, they tried again. Silent rafts drifted across the river. Soldiers crept forward, hoping to surprise the enemy. But Ly Thuong Kiet had prepared for this. Hidden watchmen spotted the movement. Signal fires burst into the sky, and in an instant, the river exploded with light. Torches, arrows tipped with fire, and flaming projectiles hurled from catapults. The night turned into chaos. Burning rafts drifted downstream. The screams of men drowning echoed in the darkness. By dawn, the Song had gained nothing but corpses in the water, and still they came. For days, the assaults repeated. Each time the Song threw more men at the river, and each time they were hurled back with terrible losses. The water itself seemed to reject them, carrying their dead downstream like a grim warning. But Guo Kui was not ready to retreat. His army was vast, his orders absolute. The siege of the Nhu Nguyet River had only begun. Days turned into weeks. The Song army did not withdraw. Instead, they built sprawling camps along the northern bank of the Nhu Nguyet River. Rows of tents stretched as far as the eye could see. Cooking fires smoked against the winter sky. War horses pawed the frozen earth. General Guo Kui turned the battle into a siege. If he could not break through the defenses by force, he would strangle Dai Viet by time. Song engineers worked day and night, trying to construct massive floating bridges that could span the river. Huge timbers were dragged from the forests, bound together with ropes and iron. Siege towers were erected, their tops bristling with archers and crossbowmen. Drums beat as thousands of soldiers prepared to surge once the bridges were lowered. But every attempt was met with fire and fury. Ly Thuong Kiet had stationed fire ships downstream, boats filled with oil, set alight and hurled against the enemy's rafts. Flames leapt into the sky, devouring wood, rope, and men alike. Bridges collapsed, siege towers toppled, and the Song found themselves back where they started. The stalemate dragged on. Inside the Song camp, morale withered. The supply lines from China were long and stretched thin. Winter rains turned the roads into rivers of mud. Food began to rot, horses starved, and disease crept silently through the crowded tents. Soldiers coughed blood, their fevered cries carrying through the night. But the defenders of Dai Viet also suffered. For every day the siege continued, their food stores dwindled. Many were farmers who knew their families were waiting back home, wondering if they would ever return. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs. Exhaustion darkened their eyes. Ly Thuong Kiet understood the danger. A single crack in morale could bring collapse. He needed something more than weapons and fortifications. He needed to give his people faith that they were not merely fighting a war, but fulfilling a destiny. So one night, as darkness cloaked the camps, a voice rose above the river. It was clear, unshaken, and seemed to come from the heavens themselves. The mountains and rivers of the southern land belong to the southern emperor. As heaven has decreed, so it is written in destiny. How dare the northern invaders trespass? They will surely meet defeat. The words rang across the water. Soldiers froze, listening. Some dropped to their knees, convinced the gods were speaking. Others clenched their fists, their eyes burning with new fire. The effect was immediate. The men of Dai Viet felt no longer alone. They believed heaven itself had declared their cause just. From that moment, they did not merely hold the river, they became the river, unbreakable, immovable. Even the Song soldiers heard the poem. Whispers spread through their camp. Some believed the land itself was cursed against them. Others began to doubt their generals. The seed of fear took root. Night after night, the poem echoed. And with each repetition, the legend of Ly Thuong Kiet grew. Not only as a general of men, but as the voice of the nation itself. The siege had become more than a clash of armies. It was now a battle of will, of spirit, of destiny. The siege dragged into its third month. The Song army, once proud and disciplined, began to rot from within. Food had run short. Supplies meant for 10 days had been stretched for weeks. Rice turned moldy. Rations grew thin. Soldiers scavenged for roots and leaves in the muddy ground. Horses, once sleek and strong, collapsed by the hundreds, their ribs jutting out, their eyes dull with hunger. And then came disease. Cramped inside tents with little clean water, men began to cough, shiver, and die. The air itself grew heavy with the stench of sickness. Corpses piled up outside the camp, and still the fever spread. Nhu Nguyet pushed his men forward, but every assault ended the same. Boats shattered, rafts burned, men dragged under the river. The mighty invasion force that had thundered into Dai Viet was dissolving before his eyes. On the other side, Dai Viet suffered too. Ly Thuong Kiet's men were exhausted, worn thin by constant battle. Their food stores dwindled. But unlike the Song, they had hope. They had the river. They had the belief that heaven itself had blessed their cause. Ly Thuong Kiet watched, waiting. He knew the Song army could not last forever. And when the moment came, he would strike. That moment arrived in the dead of night. Scouts reported chaos inside the enemy camp. Hungry, sick, and demoralized, the Song soldiers had grown restless. Guards nodded off at their posts. Fires burned low. Ly Thuong Kiet gave the order. From the shadows, thousands of Dai Viet soldiers moved silently across the river at secret fords. Others sailed down on swift warboats, hugging the currents. Under the cover of darkness, they fell upon the Song camp like thunder. The night erupted in chaos. Torches blazed, horns wailed. Caught off guard, the Song soldiers stumbled from their tents, only to be cut down before they could form ranks. Horses screamed, wagons overturned, supply stores went up in flames. Nhu Nguyet tried to rally his men, but panic spread faster than his orders. The once mighty Song army broke apart, collapsing into confusion. Some fled toward the mountains, others toward the river, only to drown in the same waters that had defied them for months. By dawn, the invasion was finished. The Song, who had come with 100,000, had been broken by hunger, disease, and the relentless will of Dai Viet. And standing at the center of victory was Ly Thuong Kiet, the man who had turned a river into a fortress and a fortress into legend. The great battle was over. The Song Dynasty's massive invasion force, once 100,000 strong, limped back across the border in defeat. What was meant to be a crushing conquest had ended in humiliation. The rivers of Dai Viet still flowed free. The people still tilled their fields, raised their children, and sang their songs. And their kingdom remained their own. In the months that followed, Envoys traveled between Dai Viet and the Song court. Neither side wanted endless war. The Song had lost too much. Dai Viet had defended its land, but its people longed for peace. Eventually, both sides agreed to a truce. The borders were restored. The armies stood down. But the true victory was not written in treaties. It was written in memory. For the people of Dai Viet, the Nhu Nguyet River became more than water and earth. It became a symbol, a reminder that even the greatest empire could be stopped by unity, courage, and strategy. And the poem, "The mountains and rivers of the southern land belong to the southern emperor," echoed through generations. It was more than words. It was a declaration, a prophecy, a promise that this land had its own destiny and no foreign power could erase it. Ly Thuong Kiet did not seek glory for himself. He did not crown himself king or carve monuments of gold. But his victory gave his people something greater than riches, the belief that their nation's spirit could never be conquered. Even centuries later, the story endures. It whispers in temples, it echoes in classrooms, it stirs the hearts of those who hear it. Because in the end, the Nhu Nguyet River was not just a battlefield, it was a message, one that still asks us even today. Is true victory found only in the clash of swords or in the unyielding spirit of a people who refuse to kneel?